Local 689 members keep the trains and the buses running throughout the Washington metropolitan area so that the riding public has a transportation system that it can count on. But Metro is in crisis. WMATA leadership is calling for cuts to bus lines, higher fares, longer waits, shorter hours. That hurts the passengers and the frontline workers. To fight for a Metro that serves us all, we the people need to stand up and organize. We know that this is possible because for generations, workers united with the community and built a movement of civil rights to fight for injustice and desegregation in the transit system.
Transit workers know what it means to organize for justice. Early fights with community support set the basic standards for transit worker members who worked in streetcars under brutal conditions. Those early pioneers who worked 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, helped set basic fare conditions that live on in today's contracts. And workers and community activists took that same fight to the front lines of the struggle to fight racism and end segregation. The streetcars of D.C. were battlegrounds against Jim Crow laws and violence against African Americans. In Congress, Jim Crow laws were pushed to segregate streetcars, and one even reached the House floor in 1915. At the same time, African Americans returning from World War I faced segregation in housing, jobs, and in riding and employment on the streetcar lines. But the pushback by the community at large against streetcar segregation meant the end of the attempt to impose Jim Crow on streetcars, even though Jim Crow laws would persist for 30 more years. Racism in streetcar employment continued for many years. In 1942, the NAACP charged Capital Transit Company with discrimination against African American streetcar workers. The community rose up together to protest the discrimination. Service was cut, and streetcars stood silent because there were not enough white workers to run the system. A year later, multiracial rallies intensified, forcing the government to act against the company, which began preliminary training of several African American workers. Yet those workers were blocked from getting a permanent job because of white workers' resistance. Worse, President Harry Truman did not enforce a government ruling to desegregate the system. When Walter Bierwagen became local president, he assembled a broad coalition, pushed the government to act, and in 1954 won the locals' endorsement to officially call for the system's integration. The company now had no choice, and with the continued pressure from the community, the integration of the system began, slowly but surely. So now the experience of a broad community coalition that ended segregation calls out to us again. We must unite together to demand a transit system that provides opportunity for all residents of the Washington metropolitan region. It's a call for preserving middle-class jobs for this generation and generations to come. And it's a call to say we want quality service for people with disabilities. And we will not accept cutting services to low-income neighborhoods. We can draw inspiration from the vision of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King, who always saw labor and civil rights as a common fight for justice, said, "Urban transit systems in most American cities have become a genuine civil rights issue."